Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
On her birthday, my girlfriend stood up in front of everyone and publicly thanked her ex for setting the standard. The whole room clapped like it was the most wholesome thing they'd ever heard. Then she flicked her eyes toward me and added, "And thanks to him as well, I suppose." A couple of her friends snickered. I didn't move. I just took a slow sip of the drink I'd paid for and let the moment burn itself into memory. 2 days later, she discovered what happens when you humiliate a man whose entire career is built on destroying people who cross him. In public, on camera, with receipts. It was Charlotte's 30th birthday, a production she'd been orchestrating for months. The theme was old Hollywood glamour. She was the dazzling leading lady, and I was the nameless crew member refilling glasses and making sure the hors d'oeuvres kept coming. The big moment arrived with the toast. Charlotte took center stage, champagne flute raised like an Oscar. Her best friend Becca, forever looking at me like I was gum on her Louboutin, stood beside her, glowing with second-hand importance. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," Charlotte began, voice perfectly rehearsed. "Turning 30 is massive, and I wouldn't be the woman I am without certain people." She thanked her parents, her ride-or-die friends, then paused for effect. Her gaze drifted to the back of the room where a tall, smug, impossibly well-groomed guy leaned against the wall. "And a very special thank you to Derek," she said, practically misty-eyed. "Yes, my ex, but honestly the person who showed me what I should expect from a partner. He raised the bar sky high, and I'll always be grateful for our time together." The room exploded. Applause, whistles, the works. Derek gave a modest little nod, like a king accepting tribute. Then, as the noise faded, Charlotte's eyes slid over to me by the bar. "Oh, and thanks to him too, I guess," she said with a lazy flick of her wrist in my direction. A few giggles rippled through the crowd. Message received, loud and clear, in front of 50 witnesses. Derek was the gold standard. I was the participation trophy. I didn't react. I didn't even blink. I just finished my drink while something cold and focused clicked into place inside my head. See, I don't do emotions when I'm attacked. I do strategy. Charlotte thought she'd executed a cute little social flex. She had no idea she'd just opened a campaign against a professional who eats reputations for breakfast. Let's be very clear. I'm not some lovesick pushover. I'm a political operative. My job is turning flawed candidates into winners, finding dirt, shaping narratives, controlling the news cycle, and burying opponents so deep they never crawl out. That I met Charlotte 8 months earlier, right after I'd come off the ugliest Senate race of my life. I was burned out, running on fumes, and needed an off-season. Charlotte was perfect for that, beautiful, uncomplicated, zero long-term potential. That I laid it out from day one. I wasn't looking for anything serious. I was healing from work. She smiled and said that was fine. The deal was simple. I funded the lifestyle, she supplied the low-stress company. Temporary contract, mutually beneficial, no illusions. The problem? She started treating the temp job like a permanent appointment, and her performance review at that birthday party was catastrophic. She didn't just disrespect me. She branded me publicly inferior. In my world, that kind of narrative has to be obliterated before it spreads. So while everyone kept drinking my wine and laughing, I was already drafting the war plan in my head. Opponent: the Charlotte-Derek axis. Objective: total annihilation. That same night, after the last guest left and Charlotte passed out surrounded by balloons, I went to my office and started building the playbook. Update 1: every successful operation begins with research. You can't destroy what you don't understand. For the next 48 hours, I ran a private intelligence operation on both targets. Charlotte was easy. I'd been bankrolling her for 8 months. I pulled every credit card statement and built a complete map of her spending. The designer wardrobe, the $400 brunches, the girls' trips, the facials. I knew exactly where every dollar went and who enabled it. Then I turned to St. Derek. On the surface, he was flawless, tech founder, vintage Aston Martin, Instagram filtered to perfection. But the shinier the facade, the more rot I expect underneath. I called a digital forensics contractor I use for political oppo. Gave him Derek's name and his company. Told him to keep it legal, just thorough. While he worked, I began phase 1, soft destabilization. Charlotte still thought I was sulking. The next morning she pouted. You barely spoke last night. You didn't even say I looked pretty. I told her I was tired. Let her think her little stunt had worked. First quiet move. Months earlier, I'd made a 5-figure donation to the glitzy charity gala committee Charlotte loved name-dropping. She bragged about my generous boyfriend constantly. I called the chairwoman, someone I actually knew from real fundraising circles, and politely withdrew the pledge citing portfolio reallocation. 24 hours later, Charlotte came storming in, shaking. Cynthia called me. She asked why my boyfriend suddenly pulled the donation. Do you know how that makes me look? Purely business, Charlotte, I said without looking up from my laptop. Market conditions changed. I'm moving capital to higher return opportunities. This isn't about money, she screamed. This is revenge for the toast. I finally met her eyes. The toast was simply additional data. It helped me reassess ROI. The gala, it turns out, is a poor investment. She understood that language perfectly: status, access, optics. I just tanked one of her primary social assets. While she reeled, my contractor delivered. Derek's revolutionary startup? Vaporware. Zero revenue, burning cash like kindling, kept alive only by daddy's rich friends and some desperate bridge loans. The Aston Martin? Leased and 2 payments behind, co-signed by dad. Perfect. Update 2 Phase 2, weaponize the research. You don't just dump raw dirt. You package it into a story people can't ignore. My audience wasn't the public. It was the tiny, interconnected world of money and influence Charlotte and Derek swam in. I created a burner email and wrote a crisp, 7-page, unsolicited due diligence memo on Derek's company. Dry, professional, devastating. Burn rate, runway, under 6 months. History of failed vanity projects quietly buried by his father. I sent it to 3 recipients only. Derek's father, the main money hose. The lead outside investor, a shark who hates losing. A business reporter who loves torching frauds. Then I moved on Charlotte's inner circle. Becca, her venomous best friend, worked at an ultra-luxury department store and routinely borrowed merchandise for weekends, returning it Monday, often helping Charlotte do the same with the employee discount. Point 1 anonymous call to corporate loss prevention later. You may want to audit returns on high-value items Monday mornings. Focus on employee Becca X. And the dominoes were set. All that was left was to wait. The first bomb went off 4 days later. The reporter published a savage expose. Innovate Next. The startup that innovated nothing. Lead investor yanked funding and threatened litigation. Derek's father, mortified, froze the trust fund tap. Derek spiraled. Becca got marched out by security the same week. Mountains of CCTV evidence. In her panic, she threw Charlotte under the bus, claiming Charlotte forced her into it. Their friendship detonated in mutual accusations. Charlotte's entire ecosystem collapsed in under 10 days. Derek dumped her. I need to focus on my crisis, You're too much drama. Becca was threatening to countersue. The gala committee quietly removed her name from the website. She showed up at my place one night sobbing, mascara rivers down her cheeks. Everything is falling apart. I don't understand what's happening. Sounds like a severe correction, I said calmly. Can I just stay here a while? I have nowhere else. No, I replied, handing her a neatly packed box. The position has been eliminated. Final update, it's been 5 weeks since launch. The results are a historic landslide. Charlotte tried a last-ditch smear campaign, painting me as the heartless villain who abandoned her. But her platform was ashes, and I still controlled the press that I fed the same reporter an off-record first-person account. Successful private guy ensnared by social climbers, discovers fraud, extracts himself cleanly. No names, but everyone who mattered knew exactly who it was about. The piece framed me as the quiet professional who outmaneuvered a pack of grifters. Narrative locked. 2 days later, Charlotte appeared at my door one final time. Broken, trembling, begging to come back, promising she'd made a terrible mistake that I let her finish. Then I looked her in the eye. You didn't make a mistake, Charlotte. You ran an abysmal campaign. Poor strategy, inconsistent messaging, unreliable coalition partners. And worst of all, you picked the wrong opponent. Her face went white as the truth hit. This was you, she whispered. All of it. I manage campaigns for a living, I said. You turned a private relationship into a public attack ad. I simply responded with a counter-campaign. And I don't lose. I closed the door. Last I heard, her trust fund dried up. She moved back to the suburbs with her parents, and now answers phones at a dental clinic. Derek is drowning in lawsuits. Becca is dealing with prosecutors. My revenge wasn't loud. There was no shouting, no scenes. Just research, timing, leverage, and execution. She thought the quiet guy paying the bills was background scenery. She never realized the quiet guy was the one directing the entire production. And in my theater, the opposition never wins.